Welcome back to Basic Business Training 2, where we are continuing our journey through management. And what does it mean to lead well, to lead in a way that God is able to be pleased with what He is seeing, as He is the owner and He has put us in charge as managers. And we've been talking about time management, and we've been talking about risk management, and we've been talking about different types of management. And what we want to do in this session is look specifically at inventory management. We want to revisit the topic of sustainability again, and then we will see if we can flow into sources of funding and how to manage our financial capacity and in our business and what that would entail for us. So let's get right to it. Let's take a look at our inventory management. And some of you might use the word inventory, some of you might use stock, you might use another word, but basically it's the products that you have within your business and that you are able to sell to your customers. If you are doing a service business, you might not have any product or any inventory that you are selling because you are selling the services that you offer. But most even who are doing services are also selling certain products to help support that. For example, somebody who has a hair salon may have different hair products that they're selling. So they are doing both services as well as products. And so inventory management is the way in which we track and keep track of that inventory. And what it's defined as is the art and the science. So it's an art and it's a science of managing to make sure that you have the right product at the right time and place, in the right amount, and at the best possible price. Let me repeat that because those are 4 different components. We want to make sure that we have the right product at the right time and place, in the right amount, and at the best possible price. And so, of course, we're thinking, well, sure, we have the right product, but inventory management would be partly to make sure that you are able to protect that product. And I'm guessing that many of you have experienced what I've experienced at times, and that is that you think that you have a proper product and only to find out that there has been some adjustments that have been made to it, possibly by employees. And we can think about different things that have been watered down, and milk is a common one. We sell milk and we water it down. I know as well gasoline can be watered down, or somebody was telling me about bleach that could be watered down. Different things that our employees might destroy the product for if they are thinking of stealing from us. And we have to have a way to manage that, to make sure that the product stays at the quality that we wanted it to stay. So we need to make sure that we have the right product, and we can't assume that when we have the right product one day that it has remained the same. We have to have a way of managing and monitoring that. We need to have those products at the right time in the right place so that when the customers come, they're able to find them. Remember, a happy customer is a happy business owner, and you want to make sure you have what they need when they need it. And then it's interesting that the term is used in exactly the right amount. And that is a big trick to figure out with inventory, to make sure that you have the right amount to satisfy the customer, but not so much that your money is tied up in it, and if you are moving the product, you become stuck. That is when sometimes we go to sales, that we reduce the price, and we begin having challenges to cover the costs that we have. And then, of course, we want to make sure it's the best possible price, which, if you remember, it's for the customer, the best price for the customer and for us. There needs to be a balance in that. So why is good inventory management so important? It's important to remember because overstocking inventory or not having enough inventory are 2 big triggers of business failures. Remember that as a customer, for me, I expect the product to be there. If it's not there, I might not return. And so how do you know what customers are going to need and when they need it? If you don't have an inventory system where you are tracking when sales are high and tracking from previous months, previous weeks, if you're not discerning the patterns of how customers are buying, it will be difficult for you to know how much product to have on hand. So tools to manage your inventory more effectively is to track that inventory or that stock on a weekly basis. Now, again, it matters what kind of business we're talking about. If you are having a provision shop, it becomes difficult to manage because you're selling maybe 100, 150 different products. And so you have to somehow keep a track of it. If you are not having it computerized or mechanized, you'll have to visually know when something is open or the second last one is open. It should trigger something for the employee who is maybe putting the item out there, that they know that they have to mark something down somewhere so you know that you are getting close to the end of that product. So you want to create a method or a procedure with flexibility that will also allow you to meet higher demand. So you want to put your money into that inventory, but if something finishes quickly, you need to have money available that you can invest to buy more to replace it so that customers can continue to feel confident and trust that you have what you need. You need to track your inventory so you know what sells quickly and what sells slowly. And you need to think of your inventory in terms of money. Not too long from now, we will be looking at money management, and we will talk about how our inventory or our stock is one of the assets that we have. It's a current asset, meaning we can turn it into cash very quickly. But it's not cash. We have to think of it, though, as that asset, and we have to protect it like it is cash and protect it from all sorts of different things. I mentioned employees before, but it also could be different types of animals that enter in. It could be different insects that can get in and spoil the sugar or the flour. There's all different things that we need to be inventorying in our stock, be looking through to make sure that they are protected from what might harm them. Another thing to note is that if you happen to buy your inventory on credit and then it doesn't sell, it's even more of a cost to your business. And so if you take stock, if you take something on credit and then you're not able to sell it, now you're having to pay interest, but you also are not making the money. And so this is something that business owners do need to set up some sort of system that will allow them to track on a regular basis what to move and what is moving the best and when it is that we need to replace it. Now, in general, there are two different ways that people track inventory. One is called first in, first out. The other one is called last in, first out. And these are more complicated ways of watching inventory. And the idea behind it is typically that the first thing that comes in is the first thing that you want to sell. And often we think about that in light of what is called the best buy date on the product. Now, my guess is if I asked you what that date is on different food products, for example, if I asked you what you call that, many of you would tell me that that's an expiration date. And it's actually not. It's actually the best buy date. And the date is something that is put on a product for when it is at the peak of its performance. And so sometimes I know that if you run a provision shop, you may see that the best buy date is approaching, and you really do need to sell it because people don't like to buy things after the best buy date has passed. But often it's because we think of it as an expiration date. And the difference is that with a best buy date, you are buying something before the peak, and it could take a very short time before it's expired, or it could take a long time depending on how well that piece of food is able to exist on a shelf. So if you think about milk, if you have a best buy date of a certain date, it doesn't take that long after that date for the milk to spoil because the life of that milk is much shorter than if you think about a bag of dry rice. A bag of dry rice may have a date on it as well, but it takes a long time for rice to go bad. And so we have to think about that for inventory. We have to pay attention to those dates, but we also don't need to throw away things that are not spoiled yet because the best buy date has passed. So for most people, they do a first in, first out when it comes to inventory. You get the products in, and those are the ones that you sell. Some people recommend a last in, first out, and the reason is because you can sell it much more closely to the price you bought it for, especially if you are working with products that have a lot of fluctuation in the price. So if you do first in, first out, you may be selling it at a price, and in the meantime, the price has gone up, but you don't want to raise the prices because you already you sold it at a certain amount or you bought it and you want to keep that price consistent. So it depends on the type of business that you have. Most businesses go with first in, first out. You have to look at that for yourself and what type of market that you are functioning in. So question that you have to ask yourself is, how do you currently implement inventory management within the following? How do you buy your inventory or other things for your business? What is the process and the procedure that you go through? How do you manage it? And how are your employees equipped to manage it? How often are you looking and evaluating to make sure that that product that you purchased is still there? How closely do you follow it? And can you identify your key suppliers? And our recommendation is that you do this on a regular basis, even a weekly basis. And sometimes it's a matter of having that in terms of your discipline, so that you are going through not only just the inventory, the stock, but also your own supplies. I remember a story of a business that had a lot of different things that they even had in storage, and they were keeping an eye on their stock, on the inventory that they were selling, but they were not paying attention to the rooms that had some storage. And there was an employee that was selling things behind their back from those storage, and when they went to go look for it, they found that a lot of it was gone. And so again, yes, it's important to protect our assets. It's also important to protect our employees from temptation. If there's something that's observed that is not being monitored, it can be a temptation for somebody to try to make use of that. And so having a good management system is going to help protect your employees, protect the assets of the business, and ultimately bring honor and glory to the owner of the business. So think about ways that you are going to manage your inventory, to supply your business. And again, when you think about suppliers, make sure that you have somebody who is a backup to your main supplier. If something happens to the person who is bringing you your stock or your inventory, you want to make sure you have a plan B so that you are not stuck and your business is without the product. And I know that we've seen that with border closings or with pandemics or with inflation, that it can be very difficult sometimes for us to work with certain suppliers. So think through, who is your plan B, who is your plan C, so that your customers will always have the product that they are looking for because you have more people to call. In 5 years, we want to think about the fact that our business management also relates to sustainability. And one of the things that we look at with sustainability is that in 5 years, we are told that there will be no access for international markets for companies that do not show respect for the environment. This is something that is becoming an increasing demand that customers are looking for as well. They want to know how much of the goods that you're selling are made out of recycled products, or how are you caring for the environment. And people want to do business with others who are also involved in sustainability. And it used to be a number of years ago that we thought that those types of actions were only for big companies, big businesses. But as we've talked about so far in this course, is that we believe this is part of the Great Commitment from Genesis 1 and 2, that God has given us the earth to work and to care for it. And we are also to be involved in the caring of the earth because it is good for us, it is good for creation, and again, it reflects well on the owner. And so sustainability is becoming fundamental to international trade. And we believe that the best way to look at this is that to think that sustainability is what a business must do to ensure long-term business success while contributing to economic and social development, a healthy environment, and a stable society. And so we think that sustainability is really, it's a win-win-win. It's good for your business, it's good for the environment, and it helps create a stable society. So let's take imagine where we might be in terms of sustainability. And in your workbook, you will see a chart. And this chart shows us where we might be at, because we're all in different parts of this continuum depending on what is going on in our community and in our nation. We see that there's many countries who are making great strides and great progress towards us, and then some countries that are not doing quite as much. Some of you might be having recycling programs in your city. Some of your countries may have said that there may not be any more plastic bags. some of your countries have agricultural ministries who are doing a lot to try to help restore the soil or to combat deforestation. And there's a lot of encouragement to plant trees. And others not so much. We're chopping down trees for our cooking, and it's contributing to some challenges. And so in this continuation, it has a number of 5 different steps that you may be at in terms of your own process and your own awareness and your own application of that awareness. And so that actually is the first step. The first step is just becoming aware that this is a problem. And becoming aware that not only is this a problem, but it's a problem that I have the ability to contribute something to. It's not just for the climate talks, or not just for the large international non-governmental organizations or for governments to deal with, but there's something that I can do in terms of creation care. And so we begin to have communication and learning about that. And from awareness, we then go towards understanding what the opportunity is, understanding what my participation is in it, and understanding even what Scripture says, what God would want for us to do as it relates to our participation in keeping this earth a place that we can call the kingdom of heaven on earth as it continues to move in that direction. And so we begin to engage in this as awareness and understanding increases. We begin to see a potential for participation. From understanding, we then go to acceptance. And we accept that not only is there an issue going on, but we accept that we have a role. We have something that we can do. We begin to make decisions in our business for how to reduce waste, decisions in our business to how to be better about conserving energy, decisions in our business for what type of products to use, to wrap our products, to have alternatives to single-use plastic, or to reduce the wear and tear that we have on the environment by the products that we use, the chemicals that we might put into the soil, all the different challenges. We become to accept that we have to make some changes, and we begin to make those changes. And so from the acceptance, we move towards a commitment. And that commitment says that I will do something. I'm not only going to do it because the government has mandated it. I'm not only doing it because we have learned these things, but I believe in my heart that this is the right thing to do. And so we make some goals, and that is part of the environmental bottom line that we have asked you to make these goals towards. So what is the commitment that we can make? And so then from commitment, of course, we move to action. And in action, that's where we begin not only to speak the commitment, but we begin to carry it out. And that's where change begins to happen. And so we need to remember that sustainability is a win-win for the creation and also for you. And so it's not something that we do only for others, but there's been studies that have been done that show that sustainability, having a committed effort to reducing waste in so many different ways, is also going to be good for the company. So we believe, and we have seen, research has shown that those who begin to have sustainable approaches in their business are able to save costs by making reductions to environmental impacts and also to treating employees well. And I think it's very interesting to notice that sustainability is not only about the physical environment, but it's also about the human environment. That people have noticed, and these are people in the business world, not necessarily involved with the church and the flourishing of employees, but they have seen that there is a lot of waste that happens when you have a high turnover rate. And if you learn to treat your employees well, it actually is good for the business and helps the business become more sustainable because you have a team that begins to know and to grow and to learn together. And so there is a cost savings for the business when the environment is treated well, when waste is reduced, and when employees are treated well. There's an increased revenues by improving the environment and benefiting the local economy as you do that. There's reduced risk through engagement with stakeholders because a lot of stakeholders now are wanting to know what you are doing to help protect the environment and care for creation. You build your reputation by increasing environmental efficiency. And so as you can boast about things that are recycled goods, or you can look at your product from where it starts all the way to where it ends up, you begin to have say and input into those different processes that are taking place. And of course, you want to be able to develop human capital through better human resource management, and that was some of what we spent in the last couple of sessions on your human resources. And so there's a chart that you will see in your workbook about how your income can be impacted through sustainability. For one thing, as you begin to do things that help reduce your waste, so let's just talk about some different examples. Of course, we know turning lights off and running things only when we need them. That's one way to save on electricity. Another way, of course, is saving water. And many of us may be working in places where there's not a lot of water to waste, so that's not an issue. But once water starts running, it becomes easy for us to waste it. And there are things that you can do. You can put a stone in the back part of your toilet to have less water flowing through it. There's a lot of different things that you can do to help decrease the amount of water that you use. There are different things that you can do as well in terms of the waste. There are many different businesses that will collect the waste, whether you are working in a hotel and you have soap that is used up, or different products that you can use. Animal waste, of course, can be made into a manure tea, and that can be very good as you put that on your soil. So there's a lot of different things that you can be using for your waste to find other uses as well, and a way to see that be beneficial for the community. And so as you begin to look at your own waste and begin to reduce it, they are seeing that there can be an increased revenue in a business that is sensitive to this of about 9%. When you reduce energy, they can see that the income statement will also begin to show an increase in profit because the energy is reduced. When you reduce waste, you also have to pay less for waste to be picked up. Reducing materials will save you money because you are now being more efficient, and everybody has been trained to be more efficient with the materials that you have. When you begin to deposit in your human resources, in the people that you have, they see an increased productivity as well, and not to mention a reduced turnover that is significant. And so you can see all of that, and they say the variability rate is about a 51 to 81% increase in terms of the profit when you start paying attention to these small details. And if you remember, when we talked about pricing, we said there's 3 ways to increase your profit. We said you can increase your sales, you can increase your price, or you can reduce your cost. And what we are talking about with sustainability is ways to reduce your costs in many, many different ways that will actually then help to increase your profit. And so those are important for us to realize. Now, I know and I understand that knowing what needs to be done is a challenge. We don't always know exactly how to approach this. We don't know always how to begin to make the steps. And in addition to that, we don't always see the outcome very quickly. We can make some of these cost changing methods, but we don't necessarily see that profit coming very quickly. And so we have to do an inventory again of our waste and to see what it is that we can reduce. We need to analyze the impacts of the business from creation to disposal. We have to decide which of those presents the greatest risk to the company. What are the things that we need to do first? And that means that we have to assess those. If you have a high turnover, you want to address that very quickly because it's taking a lot of your time and a lot of your energy, and it's not helping the business to run as a cohesive unit. Maybe you see that there's a lot of waste in other areas as it relates to some of the products that get spoiled quickly, or they're not being treated in a way that allows them to maintain their integrity. And so those are the things that you need to address first. And as you look to address them, you will have to analyze the cost. What is it going to cost me in order to try to reduce some of these things? What is it going to cost me to become more efficient in these different ways? And so that's where we have to look at obtaining the different measurements and the different standards. And there are people now that will come into your business and will help you do that. They will come in and they will look at the process from start to finish and help you see ways that you can streamline better to reduce your cost and to allow you to be more effective. So it's something that is good for us to do. It's a challenge for us to do, but it is important for us to do, especially as we look at ourselves as managers of God's business, knowing and understanding that He is a good God and that He is a holy God. He desires for us to draw near to Him, and He desires for us to be able to have a business that reflects who He is. And so it's important that you look at that, and that will be part of some of the things you will be working on as you do your own business plan, is to do some evaluations and assessments in that area. What I'd like to do now is to move on to some of the other management tools that we want to look at. And one of those management tools has to do with legal requirements for the business, and specifically we'll start with registering the business. I know that many of us don't want to register our business. We are doing our business on the street. We are doing it in the marketplace, and we have not registered it. And there are we are registered within a market, then that's one way of registering. But another way of registering, of course, is going directly to the government and letting them know your name and what you are doing and where you are doing it and so on. And so it's ethical. It's the right thing to do. It's what the government has requested that we do. And there are some benefits to doing the registration as well. Compliance with the law, it means that you will be better received by the government. And so I know that there are stories of people who have been harassed by the government or by certain government officials when they aren't registered. And so it's easier to do the right thing, to be registered, and at least be able to have that legitimate place in society and also lend your voice then to that. As a tax-paying business, you can hold the government accountable to its policies, laws, and services. And I know some of you might be smiling at each other because you think, well, we don't actually have a lot of choices to hold the government accountable. And one of the questions that I often get is, why should I register my business? Why should I pay taxes when they are so corrupt, when they are not using the money to help us as citizens, when they're not putting it back to build the infrastructure like they promise? And I know that that is a big challenge, and maybe you're blessed to work in a country where that's not a challenge, and so paying taxes is something you feel good about doing. And so it's important that we talk about these and we recognize that there's legitimacy to our feelings. But I believe that it's important that we do the right thing, and we have to not try to control what somebody else is doing by us doing the wrong thing. And so two wrongs, they say, do not make a right. And so I pay my taxes, I register my business, I seek to vote, I seek to have an impact where I can have an impact. But ultimately, they have to be responsible for their own behavior. I have to be the one to be able to answer to God, did I give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar? And that becomes an important part for me as I go through this. So as I'm saying that, we want to do these things. We believe that the role of the government is to help provide an infrastructure that allows all of us to flourish. We also know that that doesn't always happen, but we still need to do what is right. When we register our business, we can have some respect in the community, and because of that, sales can increase. People see us as a person of integrity, that we have done the right thing in the eyes of the government, and therefore our conscience is clear before God and before men. We also will be allowed to participate in national or regional business conferences or trainings that the government may have. And maybe your government also has opportunities for you to receive grants or to participate in new studies that they're doing, whether it's in agriculture or crops or in different type of entrepreneurial efforts. And if you're not registered, you're not able to participate in that. But as a registered business person, those opportunities may be afforded to you. And so that is something that we want to take seriously, that the registration of the business is a step towards you even separating yourself from the business and saying that this business is not me, that I am saying that this business is a separate legal entity. It has its own name, it has its own location, and I want it to be registered so the government recognizes it as a formal business. We move from the registration to the taxation, which of course is the system of compulsory contributions that are levied by the government or other qualified public bodies on people, corporations, and property in order to fund public expenditures. And so, as I was just saying about taxes, we think about these institutions that we call the marketplace. And if you remember, we talked about the government, we talked about education, and we talked about business. And when you think about it, the government is really there, as we've said, to level the playing field. That should be the purpose of the government, to do things that we can't do as individuals. I can't build a road that goes from Nairobi to Eldoret. But the government can take the little bit of money that I pay and that you pay and that everybody pays to help put a road in. And so that is the purpose of government. It is to help protect the citizens. It is help to provide the infrastructure for citizens so that we can do the work that God has given us to do to help people to flourish. And in many ways, education is a similar thing. The role of education is to help prepare us so that one day we can do the work that God has called us to do. And for most of us, that is in the system of business as we are making things to help people flourish, whether it's food, shelter, clothing, electricity, computers, smartphones, and so on. And so as we pay taxes, our expectation is that those taxes are used then to help level the playing field, to help all of us be able to flourish together as a country, all people being lifted, just like they say in the ocean that when the tide rises, all the ships go up. And that is the hope and the expectation when taxes are paid. Some of us live in countries where the taxation system is very strictly adhered to, and others where it's not. And I just want to share with you a story about one place where I worked where there was a lot of misinformation about taxes. So a lot of people didn't want to keep records of their sales because they didn't want to register their business, nor when they registered did they want to pay taxes. And so they didn't want to do any bookkeeping system because that means that they will be taxed on that amount. And I was very surprised by the stories that I heard from the business people I was working with, and they said that the tax man came to their business and said to them that this is the amount that you owe, and it was a very high amount. And the people looked at this amount and they said, I can't afford to pay that. And so the tax person said, well, I could go away and come back, or I could shut you down right now. And in the end, he was asking for a bribe, and the person paid them a bribe, and he went away, and a few days later or a week later he came back again and repeated the same thing. What we ended up doing was adding up how much that person had paid in bribes in 1 year, and then we actually went to the Ministry of Commerce and we had them come in and tell us how much people need to pay based on the amount of income that they have, and we found that person was paying much more in bribes, and if they had found out what the actual amount of tax owed was, they could have saved themselves a lot of money. So we need to educate ourselves, and rather than waiting for somebody to come to us, we need to go in and ask, what is the amount, what is the tax rate for my given type of business? What can I be expected to pay based on the income that I have? And then we proceed with that knowledge. And so we have to educate ourselves and to know what the opportunities are. I know there are some places that if you do not issue a receipt and the government catches you selling something without a receipt, they will close your business down. So what are the regulations? You need to know the parameters that you're working with so that you can protect this business God has given you and keep it going. When we come back, we are going to be talking about, in the next session, we will be talking about the sources of funding. But we're going to stop for now and just remember that in all things, in everything that you are doing, this business belongs to God. And so whether it's registering, whether it's inventory, whether it's all the different risk managements that we have to do, There's a lot to be faithful to God with, and we need to take the time to do that. And I hope you're not feeling overwhelmed, because remember that these things don't happen overnight. You need to identify 1 or 2 or 3 areas, begin to move forward in them, and then come back and revisit some of these things over time and begin to apply them as well. When you come back, we'll talk about sources of funding, and if you are looking or needing to have additional capital to grow your business, then we will talk to you about that in our next session. Thank you so much, and God bless you.